Hi friends, Prepared Suburbanite here with a follow-up to one of my most recent videos called 2020 Be Very Prepared. Very common theme in the comments was don't knock socialism. It's working in the Nordic countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and I've got a few thoughts about how that really does work out, so stick around. Obviously, I'm very concerned about the upcoming 2020 election. I checked this morning on Ballotpedia and found out that there are now 559 declared candidates that have filed with the FEC for the office of the President of the United States. Still only 2 on the Republican side, a majority on the Democrat side, and a whole bunch of people either undeclared or some other oddball third party, kind of an affiliation. Some are just basically unaffiliated. Why there are so many people running for president? Well, I can understand that. We're not happy with our lot in life. The Democrats are really pushing for an increase in socialism in the policies that they are endorsing as part of their platforms as they're running for president. Things like Medicare for all, free college tuition for all, or maybe some limitations in there. If you make less than a certain amount of money, you get tuition free, college, etc. So we got Medicare for all, we got tuition free college, we've got universal basic income. Some are talking $500 a month for every citizen. Some are talking $1,000 a month for every citizen. We've got the Green New Deal, which is going to force fossil fuel usage right out the window. That means no automobiles, no airplanes, you name it, whatever it is that they're trying to espouse to there. I don't think that has a chance in the current cycle, but it may in the future. One of the common themes in my last video in a commentary was, well, don't knock socialism. It works in the Baltic countries, in the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and there is Finland also in there, that have been named as examples of places where socialism worked. Those countries are not socialist countries. They are free market countries. They are economically successful. They do not meet the definition, the current definition, not the redefinition, but not the current definition of socialism, which is that the means of production are owned by the government or by the state. That doesn't happen in those Nordic countries. The government does not own the means of production. What they have is basically a system of generous capitalism, of compassionate free market. They are economically successful. They have thriving economies. They have very high rates of taxation. And through those high rates of taxation, they return benefits of certain government-controlled programs to the population. And that seems to satisfy those people, and that's fine. But it's not socialism, not according to this definition. Now, this definition has been around for a long, long time, and I suspect that, like everything else, that the folks on the left and the Democrats want to change that definition to meet their requirements. But let me ask this question. Here's the better way to ask the question. How can the state assume control over the means of production right here in the United States? Time's up. They would have to forcibly take those assets away from the owners, the capitalists, the corporations, the individuals that own businesses. And how would they have to do that? They'd have to do it by force. There isn't enough money, I don't think, that they could raise through taxes or taxation to provide a fair market relief to take that asset away and say, here's a fair market deal for you, you have to take it. And if they said no, then they'd still have to resort to force to assume that asset, to turn it into a government-controlled system. That's what socialism is. That's not going to happen in the United States, I don't believe. But if the left gets its way, I suspect that there's an awful lot of momentum that they're working on right now that's going to allow them to usurp those assets from the people that have taken the risks, that have given the sacrifices to build a company, to build a corporation, and control the means of production. They're working on it. They're working on it through an awful lot of different aspects. Right now, I just heard that the House yesterday approved the sale and transfer, I think it's H.R. 8, the sale and transfer of firearms, to take it basically away from individual transactions. They're calling it the closing the gun show loophole. Well, it's going to prevent individuals from selling firearms to each other, lending firearms to each other. It's just going to be extraordinarily difficult for an individual to be dealing with a free market kind of a thing. It's passed the House, H.R. 8. They're going to be voting on another one, which is even worse, I think, today or later this week, or maybe even the first part of next week. That's going to restrict gun rights a little bit more. But they have to have these kinds of restrictions in place that's going to allow the government to use force on a disarmed population in order to achieve their goals of socialism. And they call it socialism, they call it democratic socialism, and that term is deviously fiendish, I think. The way I interpret it, and I may be wrong, but the way I interpret it is democratic socialism means that the majority can vote to take away the assets of a small minority and force redistribution of those assets and that wealth wherever it deems that they want it. That is absolutely dangerous. They're missing the point on the whole thing, and I've got to urge you out there to become knowledgeable and to become active and fight this onslaught of socialism that's prevailing in our 2020 presidential election. This is the Prepared Suburbanite, reminding you to be prepared always, and I'll see you all on the next video.